It was a hot summer day in the small town of Lake George, located on the eastern coast of the United States. My friends Jake and Marcus had invited me on a fishing trip, and I couldn't wait to escape the sweltering heat and spend a day out on the cool water. We set off early in the morning, driving down to the marina where we rented a small fishing boat. Jake was an experienced fisherman and had brought all the necessary gear, including bait and lures. Marcus and I were excited to finally put our amateur fishing skills to the test. As we set off into the open water, the sun was just starting to peek over the horizon. The water was calm and the sky was clear, the perfect conditions for a day of fishing. We spent the morning trolling along the coast, trying different spots and techniques to catch as many fish as possible. It wasn't long before we started to see some success, pulling in a few small bass and even a couple of flounder. We were having a great time, enjoying the peacefulness of the water and the thrill of the catch. But as the day went on, the weather started to turn. The sky became overcast, and the winds picked up, creating choppy waves that made it difficult to navigate the boat. Jake and Marcus seemed unfazed by the rough conditions, but I started to feel uneasy. As we continued to fish, the winds grew stronger and the waves became larger. The boat began to pitch and roll, making it hard to stand or even move around. I clutched the railing, trying to steady myself as Jake and Marcus continued to reel in their lines. Suddenly, there was a loud crack and the boat jolted violently. I lost my footing and fell to the floor, my head hitting the hard metal surface. When I looked up, I saw that one of the masts had snapped in half and the sail was flapping wildly in the wind. Jake and Marcus were frantically trying to secure the sail, but the wind was too strong and the boat was taking on water. I could see the panic in their eyes as they realized we were in serious trouble. We tried to radio for help, but the storm had knocked out our communication system. We were completely isolated, adrift in the raging sea with no way to call for assistance. As the water continued to rise, I knew we had to abandon ship. Jake and Marcus grabbed the emergency supplies and we prepared to jump into the water. I hesitated, terrified of what could be lurking beneath the surface, but we had no choice. We donned our life jackets and jumped into the icy water, holding onto a small raft that we had managed to grab before abandoning the boat. We paddled as hard as we could, trying to stay ahead of the storm and find land. But the winds were against us and the waves were too strong, tossing us around like toys in a bathtub. As the night fell, we huddled together in the raft, shivering and hungry, with no sign of rescue in sight. I couldn't help but wonder if we would ever make it back to shore alive. The hours ticked by and the storm raged on, the winds howling and the waves crashing around us. I closed my eyes and prayed for a miracle, trying to stay strong for Jake and Marcus. But just when I thought all hope was lost, I heard a faint sound in the distance. It was the sound of a helicopter getting closer and closer. We signaled to the rescue crew, waving our arms and shouting for help. They saw us and quickly lowered a rope ladder, and we scrambled up to safety. As we were lifted into the helicopter, I couldn't believe we had made it through the night. We were cold, wet, and hungry, but alive. We were flown back to land and taken to the hospital, where we were treated for hypothermia and dehydration. It was a horrifying experience that I will never forget. I learned the hard way that Mother Nature can be unpredictable and dangerous, and it's important to always be prepared for the worst. After that harrowing fishing trip, I vowed never to set foot on a boat again. I had survived my worst nightmare, and I was grateful to be alive. It was a dark and stormy night in the small coastal town of Innsmouth, Massachusetts. The winds were howling, and the waves were crashing against the shore with ferocity. It was a night that no one in their right mind would venture out into the elements, let alone go fishing. But for my friend Richard and I, the call of the sea was too strong to ignore. We had been planning this fishing trip for weeks and were determined to brave the storm and catch some big ones. We set out in our small boat just before sunset, heading out towards the open waters. The waves were rough and the wind was strong, but we were experienced sailors and were confident in our abilities to handle the storm. As we made our way further out to sea, the storm only seemed to get worse. Lightning lit up the sky and the winds were so strong that they were nearly knocking us off course. But we pressed on, our determination to catch some fish driving us forward. It was then that we saw it, a massive creature rising out of the depths, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was unlike anything we had ever seen before, its body covered in slimy tentacles and its mouth filled with sharp teeth. We froze in fear, unsure of what to do. The creature seemed to sense our fear and let out a deafening roar, its tentacles writhing in the water. Without a moment's hesitation, we turned the boat around and began to make our way back to shore. The creature seemed to sense our retreat and gave chase, its tentacles lashing out at us as we tried to escape. We pushed hard and finally we could see the light of a town in the distance. We knew we were almost safe, but the creature was still lurking in the surrounding, appearing in the periphery every now and then. Just as we were about to reach the safety of the shore, one of the creature's tentacles lashed out and we felt a loud thud followed by airy screeches. All seemed lost as we felt like at any moment we would be dragged into the water. But somehow, we managed to break free. As we neared the grassy shore, we jumped out of the ship and swam with all our might, our lungs burning as we struggled to reach the surface just a few yards away. When we finally made it to land, we collapsed on the sandy beach, panting and gasping for air. We never spoke of that night again. The memory of the creature and its tentacles was too much to bear. But we knew that we had narrowly escaped with our lives, and that was enough. We made it back to the safety of our homes, shaken but grateful to be alive. And though we never went fishing again, the memory of that terrifying night will stay with us forever. It was a hot and humid summer day in July when my girlfriend and I decided to go fishing at the lake near our town. We had heard about the great catches that could be found there and were excited to see what we could reel in. As we set up our gear and cast our lines into the water, we couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The lake was eerily still, with not a single ripple or wave to be seen. It was as if the water itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But we shrugged off the feeling and continued to fish, chatting and laughing as we waited for a bite. The hours passed by and we had caught a few small fish, but nothing worth bragging about. Just as we were about to pack up and head home, something caught my line. I excitedly began to reel it in, eyes wide with anticipation. But as the line grew taut, we both noticed that something seemed off. The fish on the end of the line was larger than any we had ever caught before, and it seemed to be struggling against the hook with an almost supernatural strength. The reel was straining under the pressure, and the sweat started dripping down my forehead as I tried to bring the fish in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the fish broke the surface of the water, and that's when we realized just how wrong things had gone. The fish was unlike any we had ever seen before. Its body was twisted and mangled, with tentacles writhing and wriggling on its sides. Its eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light, and its mouth was full of sharp, jagged teeth. We were frozen with fear, unable to move as the fish thrashed and writhed on the end of the line. And then, with a sudden burst of strength, it broke free and disappeared back into the depths of the lake. We stared at each other in shock, unsure of what to do next. But before we could even speak, the water around us began to churn and boil. Something huge was rising from the depths, and we knew that we had to get out of there. We grabbed our gear and ran for the shore, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we reached the safety of the muddy bank, we turned to see what had been lurking beneath the surface. It was a creature from another world, a horror that should not have existed in our reality. Its body was a twisted mass of tentacles and teeth, and its eyes burned with a malevolent intelligence. We watched in terror as it thrashed and writhed, its tentacles reaching out towards us as if it could sense our presence. And then, with a final surge of energy, it disappeared back into the depths of the lake, leaving us trembling and gasping for air. We knew that we had to get out of there, to warn others of the danger that lurked beneath the surface of the lake, so we ran back to our car. We drove home as fast as we could, our minds racing with the horror we had just witnessed. And as we entered the safety of our home, we knew that we would never be able to forget the terrifying creature that lurked in the depths of the lake. We never went fishing again, and we made sure to warn everyone we knew about the dangers of the lake. But even now, years later, we still wonder and cannot comprehend what we had encountered.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to stay tuned for more true stories.